We generally don't cover financials unless they're really good or really bad at InsideEVs. And this is really bad. Hello and welcome back to the Plugged In Podcast, a weekly news show all about the future of transportation. I'm Tim Levin, senior reporter at InsideEVs. Patrick is off this week. He's at the Shanghai Auto Show, which I'm super jealous of. So stepping up to co-host is my colleague Suvrat. How's it going, man? What's up?
Hey Tim, thanks for having me on the show. It's a beautiful 73 degrees in Brooklyn today. So people are coming out, chilling. It's finally a great time for road trips.
Dude, that's the best time in New York when, like, the first warm day, everybody just comes out in like shorts and a tank top, even though it's like genuinely like, not that warm. It's the best.
That was exactly me this weekend in shorts and in Central Park.
Cool, man. You were just at the New York Auto Show. This is normally the part of the show where Patrick updates us on like what he's been driving and stuff. I know you were at the auto show, so what was that like?
Yeah, this year's New York Auto Show was surprisingly busier than the last few years. EVs, off-road focused SUVs, hybrids, I think they were all really in the spotlight this year. And Subaru especially stole the show, I think. Subaru showcased the Trailseeker EV, the upgraded Solterra. Hyundai had the Palisade, first time with a hybrid and an off-road version. And Kia showcased the EV4 for the first time in the US. But you know what I find really funny? Patrick went from the New York Auto Show last week to the Shanghai Auto Show this week. And to me, that sounds like going from a small local car exhibition directly to Disneyland, because the Shanghai Auto Show is just so much bigger in scale and excitement.
Yeah, it's auto shows in America have kind of been dying for years. I think the pandemic pretty much sealed the deal on that, and then they're kind of coming back, but like, yeah, it's nothing like what's going on in China right now. Patrick texted me last night and he was like, dude, this is 100 times bigger than CES, which CES is already, if you haven't been, the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas is like absolutely enormous. It takes over like the whole city, and that's just tech. Like that's all types of tech, TVs and cars and everything.
Right.
Shanghai Auto Show, as far as I know, just cars, and it is, as Patrick says, 100 times bigger. So we're super excited to see what kind of takeaways he has from there. We'll definitely talk about that over the next couple of weeks. But first, we should get into what's going on in the US, right, Suvrat? A new, very different kind of EV startup has arrived. Slate emerged from stealth this week and revealed its first model, a roughly $27,000 bare bones pickup truck that also transforms into an SUV. It goes on sale in 2026 and pre-orders just opened on Thursday.
The cost part is really cool to see, because historically EVs have been so expensive. I mean, we do have more affordable models in the US now, but still the average price of an EV in the US was $60,000 in March. And so many of us have just been priced out of the EV market. But Tim, tell me, what is Slate anyway?
Yeah, it's really good to see, because I mean, Slate is making EVs that are kind of like for people like you and me, people who are maybe interested in EVs or interested in owning any kind of new car, but like can't buy any because they're all pretty expensive. We're talking about basically there's a couple of bright spots in America. One is the Nissan Leaf, which is like 28 grand, but it's been around for, I don't know, 15 years. It's just like not that exciting anymore. There's some stuff from Chevrolet too, but basically we're starved for options when it comes to cheaper EVs. But yeah, so first, some stuff about Slate. It's funny, we know a lot more about Slate the vehicle, which I'll tell you about in a second, than we do Slate the company. They're keeping that pretty close to the chest. What we do know is this company was founded in 2022. It's partially funded by Jeff Bezos. and it's founded by quote unquote American innovators who wanted to revitalize American manufacturing. They don't seem, for whatever reason, they're just like not super keen on talking about who exactly like came up with the idea for this and actually started it. But that's what we know. They're going to have a factory somewhere in the Midwest. They're taking over an existing factory, and they've hired hundreds of vets from automakers like Tesla and Rivian and Ford and Harley Davidson.
I think it's a really bold move to start a brand new EV company in this day and age, especially when the competition is so cutthroat out there. But it does make me a little hopeful that there are industry execs involved in this project. It's not just a bunch of tech savvy college grads starting a new company. It's experienced people who are trying to help Slate out here. So you actually saw the Slate models in person. What can you tell us about the vehicle itself and what you thought about it?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I mean, I was skeptical at first. We've seen a lot of EV startups that have failed in the last few years. Fisker, Canoe, Lordstown, Nikola. That's like just off the top of my head, and all those pretty much stopped operations in just the last couple of years. So I was skeptical, but I've got to say I was pleasantly surprised by what Slate revealed. I went and I saw it in LA at a preview event, and I talked to some of its executives, and they have a really fresh approach to building a car company. So let me tell you a little bit about the lowdown on Slate. So in its most basic form, the Slate truck is a two-door, two-seat pickup truck, and in person, this thing is super charming. It's kind of like those old two-door pickup trucks that you see trundling around before they got super huge. If you see like old like Ford Rangers and Toyota Tacomas, like honest, they're not American because the Tacoma's not American, but honest small pickup trucks, not gigantic, good size. They are targeting a sub $20,000 price after factoring in the $7,500 federal tax credit. That's all they're saying about the price so far. They're not actually giving like a specific starting MSRP, which is why I'm saying roughly 27 grand. Like it could technically be up to 27,499 essentially. It comes with two battery sizes. One gets you the lower one gets you 150 miles of projected range. The bigger one gets you 240 miles of projected range. Single motor, rear wheel drive. And this thing is extremely basic without add-ons. This is kind of where we get into what makes Slate interesting. We're talking roll-up windows, no infotainment screen, no radio, one color, gray, and that's how every Slate truck will leave the factory. Super bare bones, basically nothing in it. And you're probably thinking like WTF, like why, like who wants a contractor grade, like rental car spec pickup truck? And that's kind of part of what Slate is trying to do. That's the intention, is like back to basics, strip away all the unnecessary stuff, transportation that people can actually afford. And here's where things get really cool. And then after I tell you this, I will let you jump in with some of your thoughts. But like, you start with this super basic platform, but you can also customize the absolute crap out of this vehicle in a way that's like never been done in the car industry. We're not talking like trims and option packages. It's like individual accessories that you choose exactly how you want your truck to be. Wheels, bumpers, vinyl wraps, interior accessories. You can add speakers, you can add leather trim, you can change the seat covers to make them more luxurious than the like basic stuff that comes with it. And their slogan is, "We built it, you make it." So you add on this stuff either when you buy the truck or over time. You can add it on later. Like you start with, the super basic one, then you're like, oh, I want a leather interior. I want a I want a radio. I want speakers, that kind of stuff. You add it on later. That's kind of the gist of this company. Super basic truck, but like tons of customization options. I think it's really innovative. I don't know if you can tell I'm like a little bit excited about this. Like I would maybe buy one. But like what do you think about this so far? What do you think about this concept?
I think the customization part that has historically been limited to extremely like high-end luxury vehicles, because if you look at the Porsche 911, for example, the level of customization on that is insane. You can add like $100,000 more of stuff on it. The Rolls Royces and the Bentleys of the world, they have similar levels of customization. But obviously now, I think we're getting to see this unique approach for the very first time on a mass market EV. So it sounds like buyers can build a truck like a Lego kit, with customers having more control over how well equipped or bare bones their EV can be, or what body shape it can have. I sort of love the idea. And I also
Yeah.
admire the design, because some automakers just tend to go too far with automotive designs these days. It's just too many elements, too many cuts and creases, lighting panels, fancy bars here and there. But the Slate truck is literally a classic two-box, squarish design with smooth surfaces. Like if you ask my nephew, hey, draw a truck on a piece of paper, and this is what my nephew would draw. So do you want to explain how the body styles look like, how they transform?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I'm with you. It is very cool to see that like you can outfit this thing in like any color you want. You can choose basically any interior you want, I believe. And that's a thing that just like has not existed. You know, in general, automakers like they have pretty rigid expectations of like you can buy this car, you can buy it in this trim. If you
Right.
want a heated steering wheel, you have to also buy this $3,000 package that includes all this crap you don't want. And like Slate is like, no, you get whatever you get what you actually want, and a lot of it you can install yourself. So yeah, one of the coolest things, the probably the coolest accessory is this kit that turns the truck into an SUV, which I mean, mind blown, right? So like during the event, I went there. They had the kind of base truck. They don't like the word base. They had the blank slate truck, the gray steel wheels truck. We looked around it, and then we went upstairs. We had lunch, and um, basically like an hour and a half later, we came back down, and that exact same truck was now a 5-seat SUV in a different
Wow.
color with different wheels, with different little accessories on the outside, different interior. And it was really cool to see just how quickly this thing could be transformed into a totally different vehicle. So there are actually two versions of the SUV. There is a kind of boxy, there's a boxy one that looks like a Land Rover Defender, kind of like a miniature Land Rover Defender. And then there's one with a kind of more slanted roof that looks kind of, I think, like an old Range Rover. Um, and both of those are things that you can install yourself. You can, any of these accessories, you can arrange for like a quote unquote service partner. They're not saying who exactly that is yet, but like we imagine it's something like Bridgestone or something like that. One of these nationwide kind of um, service networks. You can arrange for a service partner to do it for you, or they'll send you this thing like flat packed. It comes with a roll bar that has airbags in it, comes with the seats, comes with a roof, and you just like bolt all that stuff into the back of your truck, and boom, like now you have an SUV. And I think it's really cool because you can do this at any time. So like personally, like this is something exactly like I'm kind of probably the target customer for this. Like right now, it's just me and my wife, right? 2-seat, two-door pickup truck works fine. Like maybe in a few years, you have a kid and you realize you need some more space, or you're just like your life changes, and then you can like boom, you turn it into an SUV. Um, so I think that's super cool.
Yeah, even though the concept sounds novel, uh, yeah, I find this somewhat counterintuitive to where the broader industry is going, especially on the other side of the planet in China. Car makers are introducing EVs at super cheap price points, and they're doing the opposite of what Slate is doing, right? They're stuffing them with features at a very low price point. BYD, for example, uh, with its very savvily named God's Eye driver assistance system, they're going to put that in their entry-level vehicles. We are seeing cheaper vehicles with great range and faster speeds, faster charging speeds. But obviously, I don't want to compare Slate with BYD or established OEMs. This is not an apples to apples comparison, as Chinese car makers have the advantage on cost and scale. But I do like the idea of like sort of assembling an EV like IKEA furniture right in your living room. That sounds very cool. I'm also curious what market research they did. Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what kind of research they did. I think it will be really interesting to see how this plays out. Like you say, I think that's a great point. The rest of the world, especially China, is going super high tech, super advanced, and super cheap. This is not that. This is very low tech and very basic, at least in the kind of blank slate, super cheap form. I think it'll be interesting to see how people value this kind of customization because, like, you know, you compare this to, I don't know, a used Ford Maverick or something like that. Like, you're probably going to get more stuff in a more conventional vehicle for roughly the same price. But then again, if you buy something like a Maverick, like, you don't have the ability to then like do all these crazy customizations to it. So I think it'll be interesting to see.
I do have a hot take. I do have a hot take
Please.
on whether the Slate trucks would work or not. You're right. The Maverick can be had with a lot of the basic stuff at around $30,000. But I think if the federal tax credit sticks around for the next few years, then that could help offset the cost of the extra customizations that people put in their cars. And then even then it would cost like what, 27,000, 30,000?
Totally.
I think that's a banger deal.
Yeah, I think that is the big question mark here is like, does the federal EV tax credit stick around long enough to get this company off the ground? Like, if you take it away, you're talking about 27 grand ish, assuming they don't change the price, which maybe they would. Talking about 27 grand ish for a vehicle that's really interesting, but like has no radio or screen and has manual windows and all that. So, you know, we have to see whether the tax credit sticks around, which the Trump administration and Republicans in Congress have been saying they want to kill. And then we also need to know how much these accessories cost. That's a big question mark that I have, which is like, I want to know how much does it cost to get the bigger battery? How much does it cost to get the SUV? And like a couple of those kind of basic upgrades, right? Because that's going to be the one that people buy. People probably more so are going to want to buy the SUV with like a little more creature comforts. And like, how competitive is that with a Chevy Equinox EV or something? We won't know until we see what the price is for these accessories, and they're not talking about that yet.
Right. Like always, more questions than answers, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on, one thing, which is the tech in this car. And like I was saying, it is low tech, but before we move on, I just wanted to mention, like, so it has no screen, but they do this really clever thing, which is instead of a screen, it comes with one of its very few like actually equipped standard features is a phone mount where you stick your phone in, it plugs in, it charges obviously, and it also connects to the vehicle. So it'll tell you like how much range you have left, and it'll let you, you can find charging stations through there. And you can also do OTAs, over the air updates, through your phone. Wow. So like, we've been talking a lot about how software and software updatability is more and more important in the car industry. And like, the interesting thing is that the Slate truck is not connected to the internet at all, which I actually think some people might really like. No screen, no internet connection. They do the OTAs through the phone. So if they find like some kind of bug in the software of the car, they can send a update to your phone app, and then you plug the phone into your car and it'll like transmit the update to whatever component needs to be updated, which I think is like a really clever way of having this vehicle be at the same time like not connected at all, but also some of the benefits of those like little software updates that fix things.
That sounds to me like they're trying to integrate the gauge cluster and the central screen into your smartphone, because we all love Apple CarPlay and we all love
Right.
Android Auto. I mean, we love the interface that our smartphones have, but if they're going to cut costs, then maybe they're going the direction opposite of the traditional, not the traditional, I guess, but the software defined car. They're doing the opposite
Yeah.
of that with keeping things simple, cut costs down, and then maybe they'll hit that price point.
Right. They're going the complete opposite direction. They're like, we're not gonna, no big screen, no subscriptions. We're just gonna give you like the most basic thing. And for most people, that is like you use your phone to use Google Maps and to use Spotify. And a lot of people are happy with that. One clarification, there is a driver cluster. So you get a tiny screen behind the steering wheel that's like your speed and range, and also has the backup camera. But everything else that would be considered like infotainment is all going to run through your phone or like an iPad if you choose to bring that in.
I sort of dig that. I like it. Minimalism, but with a different take.
Yeah, totally. All right, let's move on to this week's installment of how Chinese EVs are absolutely kicking ass around the world. If what I'm about to say sounds like deja vu after BYD's bombshell charging news last month, I don't blame you. Chinese battery maker CATL unveiled a new EV battery that it says can charge insanely quickly, almost as fast as getting gas. First off, what is CATL and what's the news here?
Okay, so CATL, which stands for Contemporary AmpereX Technology Limited. It's quite a mouthful. It's the world's biggest battery manufacturer. They supply battery cells to a bunch of leading OEMs, including Ford and Tesla. It's hard to keep track of everything that CATL puts out because they do battery announcements so frequently. Like most of the time, it's something that blows my mind. So this time around, just days ahead of the Shanghai Auto Show, CATL held its first Technology Day. And I watched that presentation virtually from Brooklyn, which, by the way, was very poorly translated from Chinese to English. But I sort of tried my best to decipher what was going on. So they showcased 3 new battery types. First, and maybe the most exciting, is the second generation of their Shenzhen lithium iron phosphate battery. So LFP battery, which tend to be low cost, very durable. They claim it's capable of 1.3 megawatt of charging speeds. So about 1300 kilowatts. It can add 323 miles or 520 kilometers of range in just 5 minutes of charging.
Yeah, let me underline that. So this is their claim: 323 miles of range in just 5 minutes of charging. Now we'll break down in a minute like why that might not exactly be what it sounds like. But the thing to know here is that is crazy quick, especially compared to what we get in the US. So in general here for like a Tesla or other popular EVs, you're talking about 20, maybe 30 minutes to add a couple hundred miles of driving range. Some of the most advanced, like a Lucid Gravity, will do it in like 11 or 12 minutes for a couple hundred miles. And in terms of the kilowatts, which is like the charging speed or power that you can get from a charging station, most EVs in America do anywhere from like 100 to 250 kilowatts. Some of the, more advanced ones do like 300 or 400. And CATL is talking about hundreds of miles in 5 minutes, and not 200 or 300 or 400 kilowatts, but over 1,000, 1.3 megawatts or 1,300 kilowatts. So this is kind of another step change, I guess, another big breakthrough in EV fast charging tech. It sounds a lot like what BYD did recently, but just like a little bit better. Like CATL saw that news and was like, hold my beer, fam. Like, we got this.
That's actually faster than what BYD claimed last month with its super E platform. BYD said its newest cars, the Han L and the Tang L, they can add 248 miles or 400 kilometers of range in 5 minutes and charge at a rate of 1 megawatt. I guess CATL just got offended and wasn't interested in being number two.
Yeah, they were like 1 megawatt. Nah, like 1.3. How does that sound? Um, so like, I think yeah, there are some caveats that we should address and that don't often get covered when these kind of announcements come out. Like one of the big ones is basically that the Chinese standard of measuring range, of estimating range, is a lot more generous than what we have in the EPA ratings that we have in the US. EPA ratings are not perfect, but they're pretty realistic in terms of what you're actually going to get out in the real world in a car. In China, they have a much more generous testing procedure that is about 35% or results in range ratings that are about 35% higher. So like let's take this CATL news. Instead of 323 miles, if we bring that to EPA America ratings, we're talking about 210 miles in 5 minutes, which is still really great. Like I said, the Lucid Gravity is our fastest charging EV. That'll do about 200 miles in 11 minutes. This will do 210 miles in 5, so about twice as fast as the absolute fastest we get in America. So still very impressive. Not exactly, I think, what they claim. And the other thing that I would mention is like, this is as much a breakthrough in battery technology as it is kind of a choice of what to prioritize. And like, not to get too deep in the weeds here on like battery technology, but basically like in the battery world, there is always a tension between energy density and power. So basically between like the range and the energy that you can get out of a cell or a pack and the charging speed, the speed at which you can put more energy into that pack. So like CATL and BYD have announced these batteries that charge super quick, but they probably don't hold as much energy as other cells, even as some of the ones we get in America. So like there's always this balance. There's always this balancing act. And it doesn't necessarily mean that this is like the perfect battery, because it's probably not super great in other ways aside from the power.
You're absolutely right. There always is some kind of a trade off or balance between efficiency and just brute power and charging speeds.
Yeah.
And you're right, these estimates are based on China's overly optimistic test cycle. And the 12C of charging rate, which they are claiming, which basically means the 12 times, which basically means this battery can do 12 cycles in 1 hour. So 12 charging cycles in one single hour. But that probably is not true for like a full 0 to 100% charge. That's probably true for, say, 10 to 90% or 20 to 80%, but definitely not a 0 to 100%. And that's something a battery industry CEO told me this morning. I'm not allowed to talk much about what she said, but she was on board with the fact that these OEMs do make big claims. But
Right.
even then, they're way better than most EV packs we have in the US. But to my surprise, shortly after CATL made its announcement, Chinese tech company Huawei, which by the way makes everything from smartphones to EVs to self-driving software, and now they're also making 1.5 megawatt chargers. So for these super capable batteries to work, you also need very fast chargers. So China seems to be doing both these things: fast charging batteries and extremely fast charging dispensers.
Yeah, it seems like this is kind of the latest, I don't know, the latest arms race, the latest technology arms race in the Chinese EV market is like, who can make the absolute fastest charging battery and these crazy powerful fast charging stalls. That will also be important. Like, in order for this battery to work, you need a 1.3 megawatt charger, which is something that doesn't really exist. Like in America, we have that kind of technology. It's mostly for big semi trucks that have gigantic batteries and could use like an insane amount of power just to get them back on the road quickly. This is going to be one of the big hurdles. Like, one of them is the batteries and the car technology being able to take in that much power and charge super fast. The other one is like, okay, in order for that to actually be a thing, you need to have megawatt chargers that are like 5 times as powerful as current ones all over the place. I guess my question to you is like, how big a deal do you think this is? Do you think that we actually need 5-minute charging? I personally think that probably slow charging everywhere, slow charging on like curbsides and parking lots, so you can just charge all the time, is probably more important. I got a lot of heat when I wrote a story that was basically like, we probably don't actually need 5-minute charging. But what do you think?
No, I'm on board with you. I think charging stations, especially the slower ones, they should be everywhere. As the phrase goes, ABC, like always be charging wherever you go, just plug in. But hyperfast charging speeds are more of a nice to have than a critical necessity. I mean, I do see certain use cases of hyperfast charging. If drivers are running late, they can't stop, and they just need a quick refill, it could work for them. But for most owners, I mean, I've never heard like Tesla owners complain about how superchargers are slow, at least in recent times.
Yeah,
Most
true.
superchargers in the US are they only dispense about 250 kilowatts. And I think 10 to 15 minutes for a 20 to 80% charge is really the sweet spot. Normal refreshment stops take that long anyway.
Yeah, totally. I'm with you there. And before we move on, that is not all CATL revealed. They also revealed a sodium ion battery. What's so special about that?
Yes, CATL also revealed 2 other battery types. One of them is what the company claims to be the world's first mass-produced sodium ion battery. So they did 2 types of that, a low voltage sodium ion pack and a high voltage one. And to put it simply, sodium ion works exactly the same as lithium ion batteries, but there are certain differences when it comes to the properties of sodium ion. The sodium ions, especially like the small active particles, which basically make your battery charge or discharge, those particles are bigger than lithium ion. And sodium, most importantly, sodium is 1,000 times more abundant on Earth, and its environmental impact is much lower. Apparently, it has really good charging speeds in freezing temperatures, which typically slows down charging speeds. So this CATL high voltage sodium ion pack can charge at near full speeds, even in minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It can go from 30% to 80% charge in just 30 minutes in those temperatures, which sounds really impressive. But they also had another crazy battery called the Freevoy Dual Power Pack. Now, I don't want to bombard you guys with so much nerdy battery information, but I'm just going to very quickly explain what this new battery is. It's basically 2 packs with different chemistries in one single floor space in a vehicle. And that CATL claims can deliver 923 miles of range on China's very optimistic test cycle. So if it were available in the US, you could go from San Francisco to Phoenix in just one charge.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's like one pack with basically kind of like a main battery and a range extending battery, right? That have like 2 different chemistries designed for 2 different kind of uses. Wild stuff coming out of China as usual, but we probably won't get this kind of stuff in the US. Trade tensions are running super high. We have obviously huge tariffs on both Chinese EVs and Chinese batteries. And we're not exactly the friendliest of, we're not exactly friends right now. So probably going to have to wait a long time before any of these technologies come to America.
They probably will not, but I want to note that Chinese battery makers, they're increasingly looking to have licensing agreements with American car makers because we have these trade barriers. Uh, CATL already has a licensing agreement with Ford. They're building LFP packs at the Blue Oval plant in Michigan. And GM is also in talks right now. They haven't released anything for sure yet, but they're talking with CATL right now. But moving on from Chinese car companies who are doing super well to American EV companies that are sort of figuring things out, what's happening to Tesla's cheap EV, Tim?
Yeah, if you've been holding out for a cheaper Tesla, you might have to wait a little bit longer or buy used. Reuters reports that Tesla's long-awaited, more affordable EV will be delayed by at least a few months and possibly more than that.
As a refresher, Tesla has been talking about releasing cheap EVs for years, and those plans are still on track for production in the first half of this year, which is pretty soon. So if Tesla sticks with its plans, we should see newer models, cheaper models, sometime around June.
Yeah, and that's a big if. I mean, that is what Tesla is saying. Officially, Tesla is saying this more affordable EV that they're developing is still on track. Reuters says otherwise. We'll have to see. But just a quick recap, like if you're confused about Tesla's plans here for a cheaper EV, I don't blame you. They have shifted a lot over the years. So I'll just run down kind of the history of this program and sort of where we're at now. In 2020, Elon Musk said Tesla would launch a $25,000 EV in 3 years. That obviously did not happen. In 2022, on an earnings call, he said Tesla was not currently working on the $25,000 car because it had other stuff on its plate. We know from Walter Isaacson's reporting that around this time, Tesla was planning to build a low-cost car and a purpose-built robotaxi with no steering wheel or pedals on the same next-generation vehicle platform. Then everything changed, right? In early 2024, Reuters had this bombshell report claiming basically that Tesla had completely stopped working on the cheap car and was going full on into robotaxi. And that's pretty much been the vibe at Tesla lately, which is all AI, all robotics, all autonomous stuff, and not a lot of attention on the core business of actually building new cars, which it really needs. And so that brings us today, which is when unspecified, quote unquote, more affordable models are back on the table, but they will not be at that $25,000 price point. They're going to be more closely related. Yeah, they're going to be more closely related to Tesla's current products, the Model 3 and the Model Y.
Yeah, I'm not too sure if the market is craving for something that's very similar to the Model 3 or Model Y, but I guess we'll find out. I guess the one big question mark is what exactly these affordable models will be. We know that they could be stripped down versions, but they are supposedly going into production in the next couple of months. And it's sort of weird, but not unusual, given that how Tesla hasn't really shared any details so far.
Yeah, you would think, I mean, everybody, Wall Street analysts, Tesla fans, everybody's been saying Tesla needs a cheaper model for years, right? The demand, it seems like, for the Model 3 and the Model Y, which are these like huge sellers for Tesla, especially the Model Y, demand is capping out. And like any good car company, like you need different models at different price points to capture more buyers. And when something starts to get old, you need to give them something new. When something, when you're at this higher price point for a long time, you need something kind of entry level to get people into the brand. And so it's kind of weird that given that Tesla knows exactly what it needs to do, they won't come out and say like, we have a brand new model coming soon. Like they're very cryptic about what it is and whether it really is a new vehicle or something that's just a version of an existing one. And so on Tesla's earnings call this week, a Wall Street analyst asked point blank, like, is this going to be a version of the Model Y? And they wouldn't answer that. But we got probably our most clear picture of what it might be from Tesla yet, which is the company's head of engineering said, quote, "The models that come out in the next months will resemble in form and shape the cars that we currently make, and the key is that they will be affordable." So there you go. It sounds like we're talking about something very closely related to what Tesla currently sells. The same Reuters report that I mentioned earlier says that it is going to be a smaller, more basic version of the Model Y. And I think if it was something completely different and new, like, they would be screaming that from the rooftops, saying like, "Hey guys, like, we have something new coming. Stop selling off our stock." But that doesn't seem to be the case.
Right. If it was something radical, I'm sure we would see a lot more noise from Tesla. But I feel like people who are interested in Teslas and want to buy one, they already have Teslas. For the company to unlock a whole new pool of buyers, I think they're going to need something more than just stripped out versions of its existing models. But something worth noting is Lars Moravi, who is the VP of engineering at Tesla, he said that more models are coming. He said that in plural. So it could be more than one car, or it could also just be like multiple trims of a single model. But this kind of vehicle is super important for the wider market, like we discussed. Tesla sales have been dropping, the lineup has been relatively aging, but we do have an influx of new and relatively cheaper models from General Motors, Hyundai. So it's really interesting to see what Tesla will have in June.
Yeah, totally. They released a new version of the Model Y this year, a kind of nose job version of that. And we'll have to see how much that does for sales. But in general, like, they need more cars and they need new cars, and we'll have to see what they can deliver. And importantly, like, does this counteract the brand damage that has been going on due to Elon Musk and his role in Doge? I don't know. I think like you say, a stripped down Model Y is not gonna do that. It's not gonna necessarily like change the image of Tesla and make people who are really fired up about politics go and buy a Tesla. You're gonna need something significantly different and new to do that. All right, now it's time for Plus Minus, our segment where we talk about who's up and who's down in the EV world. You're the guest, so you go first.
Thanks, Tim. I'll go first. So maybe I'm being a bit biased here, but I think Subaru really knocked it out of the park at the New York Auto Show. The EV industry in the US needed some good vibes. Amid all the scary stuff, the tariffs, the risk of prices going up, inflation going up, and the Trailseeker is just that, is just good vibes. It looks cool, it has off-roady bits, it's an EV. But of course, it will be affected by tariffs if it comes to the US, because it's going to be made at a Subaru plant in Japan, unless they change that in the next few months. But I hope the tariffs go away, and I hope that the Trailseeker becomes a reality. I think it will, because they're backed by this small little unknown company that nobody's heard of called Toyota.
Yeah, I think I have heard of them. Yeah, no, this is super cool. This is the Trailseeker. We talked about it last week on the show. This is basically an electric version of the Subaru Outback, and this is really good news for Subaru, which only has one EV on the market right now. I think it's good news for EV buyers out there, people who want an electric station wagon type thing, which you can't get right now. I have a minus, and it's going back to our last segment. My minus is Tesla. Tesla is undoubtedly the loser of this week. They reported earnings, and their net income for Q1 was down 71% year over year to $409 million on, like we've been talking about, lower sales. Net income down 71% is not a good look for any company. You know, we generally don't cover financials unless they're really good or really bad at InsideEVs. And this is really bad. This is a company that's been earning over $1 billion a quarter in net income for many, many, many quarters in a row. Now they're down to in the hundreds of millions. Not a good look for Tesla. And this is gonna be a real test of Tesla this year. Can they pull themselves out of this hole? All right. Well, thanks so much, man, for stepping in. Really appreciate it.
Happy to.
Thanks for listening to the Plugged In podcast from InsideEVs. We'll be back next Friday. Today's show was produced by Michael Perkins and is brought to you by the Motorsport Network. Make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts and send your questions about the EV world to podcast@InsideEVs.com. See you next time.
See you guys.